As a final video before I go on vacation from YouTube this week, I wanted to sit down and talk to you guys about my view about the state of Xbox's 2022 showcase, namely 4 games that stood out to me overall: RedFall, Persona, Diablo 4, and StarField. Now, they announced and showed off a lot of gameplay for games that I'm absolutely going to try that are a part of Game Pass. But I think the biggest takeaway is that I've been so very curious about especially Redfall and StarField. And so I want to spend some time talking to you guys about my impression of what we saw just yesterday. Now, at its core, Redfall looks like a looter shooter RPG, and the question comes up to it is it a games as a service, or is it going to be a standalone RPG? And there's no wrong answer in that regards. Like, if it's just a standalone RPG, that's going to be, it looks like fun. It's got the co-op experience, going to play with friends. I'm very excited to see how that plays out. If it is a games as a service game, is it going to launch with enough content? Generally speaking, service-based games always kind of feel very light in their first year before it kind of picks up speed from there. And obviously they're targeting a 2023 release date, and from the looks of it, it feels like it's a blend between Borderlands and Overwatch in terms of its characterization, but also in that RPG looter shooter setting. And I'm thrilled. Like, honestly, like, at the end of the day, it looks really good. I actually appreciated one of the things from the trailer is that it felt like the characters themselves were having the dialogue and the conversation, as opposed to like actors that were hired to try and pretend to be the characters while they're playing with their friends. And anybody who's ever seen kind of a Ubisoft presentation will know what I mean by that. It always kind of feels like you're just playing your character that doesn't actually have a personality. So people who are playing the game are interjecting their personality into the world, and it never felt natural. Like, it was great for a presentation in a trailer, but here in Redfall, it felt like the characters themselves were speaking and talking to one another as you're kind of playing through the game, which adds, I think, so much to the world and to the story of the game with that exposition. Now, obviously, when it comes to exposition, if you're actually in voice comms with your friends, you're not going to be playing and talking like that. So how that ends up affecting us and affecting the gameplay overall will be interesting. I think Destiny kind of does it best when it comes down to delivering exposition as you're running certain missions and not necessarily stepping on, the player chatter, too much in that regard. So we'll have to wait and see how it kind of plays out, but it doesn't seem like we're going to be waiting too long. Now, before we get into the StarField talk, because StarField is something I think is dramatically important to me now, where before I could not understand why people were excited about it. I was like, we haven't seen anything. We haven't even seen the game, but we've now seen the game and what they're hoping to deliver next year. And it does feel like, having more time to polish up what they're gonna have is gonna be important. But before we kind of dive into kind of my thoughts more on StarField, Persona feels like it's about time. Like, I know that like Xbox fans have been eagerly waiting for that, but for those of you who aren't Xbox fans, the cool thing is Persona is also coming to the PlayStation 5, to Steam. So it isn't necessarily about locking games away, which I think is really important. I do have issue with that aspect, and one of the things, the savings graces in this regards, is that when you see Xbox, it's Xbox consoles and PC and Steam, and that seems to be kind of their big kind of push for gaming. So it opens it up to people. You don't have to go buy an Xbox if you want to play these games, and I think that allows for bigger communities to form around these games and more support for these kind of games as well, as opposed to having this old mindset of being divided of PlayStation, Xbox. But that kind of bleeds into Diablo 4, because while I've never played Persona, I've been kind of eagerly hoping that it would come to Xbox. Now that it is, especially as a part of Game Pass, I'm going to pick that up, even though like people are like, oh, Persona 4 is on Steam. Now Persona 5 Royale is going to be on Steam too. I think I'm going to get it via Game Pass, play it on my console, and essentially enjoy it for a kind of a me experience. But maybe we'll do a stream about it if you guys are generally curious and have played Persona. I haven't, and I've just heard such praise for the game itself. I think it'll be interesting to kind of see how that goes in the long run. So sound off in the comments below if you guys feel like you'd like that sometime in October, because that's when that's going down. But Diablo 4 announced, obviously coming to PlayStation, PC, Xbox, all that wonderful stuff with full cross progression and cross play. I think this is going to be great. It's an open world, shared world. People are debating if it's an MMORPG. And off the heels of Diablo Immortal, I know people are very skeptical, but it's not off the heels like next week. It's going to be sometime in 2023. fully after the acquisition of Microsoft Blizzard in this case, but should be about that around that time, if not later. And I think that is going to help essentially kind of ease the burden. Now, people are obviously concerned about the cash shop that's already apparently going to be a part of Diablo 4. And rightfully so. Like when you look at Immortal, it is absolutely like here to get your money, and it's doing really well at getting your money. I think some of the reports already show that it has been making an insane amount of money, and it's getting an insane amount of traction. And that kind of questions, is that going to bleed into Diablo 4? And with Diablo 4 in Game Pass, I don't think so. I think they're going to sell it, especially on console, as a buy-to-play game. But I think what we'll end up seeing is some kind of forms of battle passes and other kind of evolutionary service-driven aspects to continue the game on. Diablo 3 has run for years and years and years off of its seasonal model, and I could see them shifting that seasonal model into a battle pass model where they're continually releasing new content or reiterating on the existing content as a way of driving you back into it. The question has always been, especially with Diablo, when something like Destiny does looter shooter, that shared world better, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, why isn't Diablo in that space? Especially because like a lot of what you get from the current games as a service model really was iterative off of what Diablo ended up coming into the genre and kind of establishing it, especially as an action RPG, but an online one with multiplayer as well. But at the end of the day, Diablo 4 looks really great. They got the new they got 5 classes. Honestly, playing it in the past was a lot of fun. And at the end of the day, I keep saying at the end of the day, I hope that it's good. I really hope that we can sit down and say, well, yeah, mobile phones, mobile games are mobile games, and then there's a clear distinction, and we don't see so much mobile-esque, mindset bled into kind of a PC console game at this point. The fact that it supports controller, the fact that it's cross-play, cross-progression across all platforms has me personally excited, and I think that's going to end up helping the franchise out in the long run, but time will ultimately tell. Now, like I said, when it comes down to StarField, I don't understand why people were excited about this game. They announced it with the release date, showed off some in-game footage with the release date, and we really knew nothing else of it. But essentially what it feels like it's a cross between No Man's Sky and, in a way, a shooter. And that's actually something that looked really good, as opposed to something where you would look at Fallout and its gritty kind of nuclear war era. StarField is like this kind of hopeful exploration, but also a shooter in this regards, and that I think got me really excited. So as they're kind of walking through the planet, obviously it's very directed in terms of what it's revealing to us each and every moment, and you're kind of collecting materials, and okay, cool, that's all good. This looks like pretty standard. And then they go into the combat aspects of it, and I was like, oh, this looks really good. And it actually had me excited to explore it. And then they start talking about customizing your ships and building your little town bases and exploring over 1,000 planets, and you have space combat. And then the game just feels massive to me. It just feels like this massive RPG that you can completely get lost into. Now, ultimately, that will be telling to see as people start to speedrun and explore the game and the world. But I actually went from being completely all right, I'll believe it when I see it, to being excited for the future and being excited for what StarField could bring next year. And I want them to take their time and make sure it's completely polished. I mean, it's going to be a Bethesda game. It's going to be Bethesda, no matter what you do. But at its core, I really appreciated what they delivered. I'm very excited to see where the game can go from here. And it's going to be interesting to see if combat feels as good as it presented the other day, because I think that's kind of a key aspect, especially when it comes down to it. The thing I did find humorous is you're killing an enemy for 5 experience, and then they go blow up a ship in space for 23 experience, and I'm like, I don't know. I get tickled at terms of scale when it comes down to XP and leveling, but it's going to be fun. It seems like it's going to be interesting, visually very, very pleasing, very cinematic. And the question is that how does that translate into the moment to moment gameplay? Because they say that you can go to these planets, they say you can do all these things, but it's Todd Howard as well. So again, it's still, there is a part of it that's I'll believe it when I see it, but at least they showed it off in terms of gameplay and what the scale of the game that they're going for. And I think that's something to be commended and to be excited about. But that's going to wrap it up, guys. Thanks for taking your time with me today. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully you got some fun gaming news. Haven't really felt like this Summer Game Fest has been any mind-blowing, oh my gosh moments. And that's okay. You know, like at the end of the day, that's okay. I got lots of really good games that I'm enjoying. And then there's a handful of games that I'm really excited about for the future. But that's going to wrap it up for me, guys. Thanks so much for your time. Hopefully you guys enjoy, and hopefully I'll see you in some future videos that I've got scheduled out for you this week. But yeah, and then if nothing else, we'll talk about all the cool game stuff that's happening next week when I'm back. Anyway, thanks guys. Love you faces, and I'll see you next time. Take care.
Yeah. It's time to chill out on the couch and read some comments. That's right. You know me when it comes to Destiny. I'm off with a clan, and I'm glad you're feeling better. Oh yeah.